This is the mop-up for March 5th, 2024. I'm David Feldman coming to you from New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. It came as no surprise. On Monday, the United States Supreme Court overturned the Colorado State Supreme Court, which had ruled that Donald Trump's name be removed from the Colorado state ballot, citing Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which says anyone who swore an oath to uphold the Constitution and then participated in an insurrection cannot hold elective office. But on Monday, the Supreme Court overturned that Colorado court's ruling, thus also invalidating similar rulings in Maine and Illinois, where officials said they wanted to scrub Trump's name from the ballot pending our Supreme Court's ruling. Up until Monday's ruling, 32 other states were fielding 14th Amendment challenges to disqualify Trump from their ballots. All those suits will now be tossed out after the court's 9-0 unanimous ruling. That's right, all 9 voted. Clarence Thomas failed to recuse himself despite the overwhelming evidence that his wife Ginny played a key role encouraging the Trump White House to stop the counting of votes on January 6. The ruling was simultaneously narrow and overreaching. Narrow in that the court didn't rule on whether January 6 was in fact an insurrection, or if Donald Trump led or participated in it. The court stayed away from the First Amendment issue as to whether Donald Trump's speech on the ellipse that day constituted a call to arms. It also steered clear from attempting to resolve the semantics of whether the President of the United States is considered an office holder and therefore subject to the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment. Instead, the court said states lack the authority to remove a candidate for federal office from their individual ballots. The court said states are free to use Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to disqualify candidates running for office in their own state. But when it comes to the president, the disqualification could only come through an act of Congress. And that's where the ruling went from narrow to overreaching, when they wrote that the only way you can disqualify a candidate for president is through an act of Congress. No longer narrow, overreaching. All 9 justices agreed that the states lack the authority to remove a presidential candidate from their ballot. But 4 justices said they disagreed with the part of the ruling that stripped our federal courts of any authority to remove a candidate from federal office. This ruling specified that Section 3 of the 14th Amendment can now only be applied through an act of Congress. 3 liberal justices, Justices Ketanji Brown Jackson, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor, along with conservative Amy Coney Barrett, all dissented to this one part of the decision, that part of the decision that said Section 3 of the 14th Amendment can only be enforced through an act of Congress and not by the courts. Does anyone think Speaker Mike Johnson would even introduce a resolution to disqualify Trump or any of the members of the House Freedom Caucus who aided and abetted Trump on January 6? When it comes to removing insurrectionists from our midst, the courts have now eliminated any remedy other than relying on the insurrectionists themselves to disqualify themselves. And we know that's never going to happen. This is somewhat identical to the argument Trump's lawyers will be making next month when they go before the Supreme Court to argue that the President of the United States enjoys absolute immunity from criminal trial for anything they do while in office. Now, Trump's lawyers are going to insist the only way to hold a president accountable is through impeachment and a conviction in the Senate. They will argue the Senate must convict the president before he is subject to the United States Penal Code. Axios reports that the Supreme Court ruling on Monday now opens the door wide open for January 6ers, many of whom are becoming political heroes. This Supreme Court ruling has opened the door for January 6ers when they come out of jail and prison to run for elective office without any judges having the authority to apply Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to disqualify them. Thanks to Monday's ruling from the Supreme Court, it's all left to an act of Congress to disqualify each candidate individually. Good luck with that. Again, we can't even get rid of the Republicans already serving in the House who aided and abetted the January 6th insurrection. I'm talking about you, Pennsylvania Congressman Scott Perry. I'm talking about you, Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, who was in constant communication with Donald Trump on January 6th, before and after the insurrection. What did you talk about? Why did you refuse the subpoena from the January 6th committee? I'm talking about you, Arizona Republican Andy Biggs. Why were you asking the Trump White House for a blanket pardon after January 6th? Do you think it's conceivable that the House would ever eject these guys for participating in insurrection? Only the courts could remove them, and now, thanks to our Supreme Court, that's an impossibility. Like the Kennedy assassination, Contragate, the illegal invasion of Iraq, our system lacks the vocabulary to pull on the strings to see just how many members of our own government were complicit on January 6th. We're never going to find out. But I'm going to defend Merrick Garland, because a lot of my listeners keep blaming Merrick Garland, our Attorney General, for not moving quickly enough to prosecute the January 6ers. Now, Merrick Garland is our Attorney General. He is not the judge, jury, and executioner. You need a grand jury to hand down criminal indictments, and then you have to make those indictments stick. You need to get convictions. Short of President Biden invoking emergency powers and declaring martial law, and then rounding up everyone who participated in January 6th, we have to let this wind its way through the courts. And unfortunately, it not only takes time, it also takes thousands and thousands of hours of Justice Department employees battling Trump's attorneys who are masters of delay, who are financially incentivized to delay. They're getting what, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 an hour? They want to delay everything. So it's not good enough for Merrick Garland to indict. He has to win. And before you call our Attorney General, Merrick Garland, weak, why don't you check out the Justice Department's win-loss record when it comes to January 6th. Close to 1,000 convictions, several for seditious conspiracy. The Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys are doing time for seditious conspiracy. I don't think the Justice Department, when it comes to January 6th, has lost a single case. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments section. But I don't think so. He's won convictions for close to 1,000 January 6ers, which is why Donald Trump is doing everything he can to delay his 2 criminal trials until after the November election in the hope that he will win and then order his attorney general to drop the cases. That is a testament to Merrick Garland's Justice Department that Trump is doing everything he can to avoid sitting in a criminal courtroom going eyeball to eyeball against special counsel Jack Smith. I believe history will remember Merrick Garland's prosecution of the January 6ers, including Donald Trump. I think he'll be remembered favorably. These things take time. As I said, the Supreme Court hears oral arguments in April as to whether or not Donald Trump enjoys absolute immunity for any crimes he committed while president. Now, until the court rules that he doesn't, in fact, have immunity, we know that the court is dragging its feet to buy him time, but we know it's impossible. There's no way they're going to rule that the president has absolute immunity. But until they make that ruling, 2 federal trials are being held in abeyance. Those 2 trials are the D.C. election interference trial and the Miami trial, where Donald Trump is charged with violating the Espionage Act for mishandling classified documents. Yes, Donald Trump is on trial for violating the Espionage Act. Never forget that he's an adjudicated rapist and has been indicted for violating the Espionage Act, and somehow people are voting for him. Now, the Manhattan District Attorney's criminal trial charging Trump with violating campaign finance law and falsifying documents, that remains on the docket. It's later this month, March 25th, because the Supreme Court's immunity ruling only affects federal trials. And the RICO trial down in Georgia, where Trump is accused of attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election in that state, is also immune to the court's immunity ruling. That's going to happen. We are just waiting on Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee to rule on whether he's going to disqualify District Attorney Fani Willis and possibly move this trial to another venue. Willis is accused of carrying on a romantic relationship with her lead prosecutor, which Trump's lawyers insist demonstrates a conflict of interest. Why? Because she wasn't carrying on an affair with Donald Trump? It is not a conflict of interest. It's just a delay tactic. This is all about just postponing the trial. And Judge McAfee should never have let it get this far, especially since he's a Republican. You know, unlike our Attorney General Merrick Garland, who's a Democrat, Judge McAfee doesn't have to bend over backwards to prove he's not biased. He's a product of the Federalist Society. His conservative bona fides are beyond repute. So he should be done with this. He knows better. But we're waiting. We're waiting. We have to wait 2 weeks before his ruling comes down. And why is that? Well, because everything in life is politics. And quite frankly, I wouldn't want it any other way. Fani Willis was elected district attorney of Fulton County. And Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee was also elected judge. And they're both presumably running for re-election in November. They have until March 8th to file papers to make it official that they are running for re-election in November. So why is Judge McAfee waiting until after March 8th to issue his ruling? Politics. Shannon McCaffrey writes in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution this morning that perhaps the reason Judge McAfee said on Friday that he will make his ruling in 2 weeks, that would be past the March 8th deadline to qualify for the ballot. That's because he wants to discourage candidates from jumping into his race for judge or Fani Willis's race for district attorney because of his ruling. So he's going to wait till people can't file to run, and then he's going to issue his ruling, because everything is politics. It is conceivable, by the way, assuming Fani Willis is not disqualified, that her RICO trial will start in the fall with Donald Trump running for president, while Fani Willis and Judge McAfee are both running for re-election. It's all political, but I wouldn't want it any other way. It's better than the alternative, like our Supreme Court of 9 unelected judges who are all political, but never had to run for office. So let's stop pretending our law isn't political. It's political, and we have to do something about our Supreme Court. It's undemocratic. It is simply undemocratic. The 2024 budget should have been passed and in effect all the way back in October of 2023. That's when the budget begins. We were supposed to be working on the 2025 budget by now. Instead, we narrowly averted once again a partial government shutdown on Friday when Congress signed on to a short-term extension. Believe it or not, Republican Speaker Mike Johnson and Democratic Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer might actually have a spending bill ready for the House of Representatives to vote on tomorrow. We are currently, if you remember, operating under what is called a laddered continuing resolution. And right now we need to get 6 appropriations bills passed to avert a partial shutdown by the end of the week. And on Sunday, the House and Senate unveiled a $435 billion spending package that includes 6 of those 12 bills. You need 12 bills to pass a budget. 6 will be presented supposedly tomorrow to the House of Representatives. So the problem for Speaker Mike Johnson is if, and a lot can happen between now and tomorrow, but if he presents this $435 billion spending package, if he does this, it would be yet another vow that he broke to his caucus. He was elected Speaker on a promise of single-subject spending bills, not 6 bills bundled together. And more importantly, he promised not to work with Democrats. The problem he has is he's got only 2 votes to spare in his razor-thin majority. And Johnson is planning to introduce on Wednesday this massive spending bill through a process called suspension. Suspension is how all the continuing resolutions have been passed since October 1st of last year. Johnson is planning to once again bypass the Rules Committee and just throw the spending package straight to the floor for a simple thumbs up or thumbs down. Now, because it's being introduced through suspension, parliamentary rules dictate that 2/3 of the House must vote in favor of it for it to pass. And that means he needs Democrats. But as I've pointed out before, his hard right flank is going to complain. You're working with Democrats, unacceptable. However, secretly, they love suspension because it gives them political cover to remain wrecking balls, railing against the spending bill, raising money by voting against it, while at the same time knowing they're not going to kill it. They have the Democrats to save them. So it really, if this goes through, it's a win-win. Suspension is a win-win for the hard right Republicans. They get to be flamethrowers without actually burning the place down. Over and above the 2024 budget, there is also this stubborn $95 billion foreign aid supplemental. It's called a supplemental because it's not included in the budget. It's additional supplemental spending that President Biden wants to give Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and humanitarian relief for Gaza. A bipartisan border bill was attached to this supplemental, but Donald Trump made Mike Johnson remove the border bill because he said, I can't have Joe Biden or the Democrats get any credit for solving my migrant crisis. He literally said, we need to keep this issue alive so I can run on it. Now, this border bill was the most significant piece of immigration reform in 30 years. Trump ordered the Speaker of the House to kill it, and he did. Donald Trump does not hold elective office. He's maybe the presumptive nominee, but he's calling the shots in the House. And he said, kill the border bill. Mike Johnson killed it. So we're left with a foreign aid supplemental that comes to about, what did I say, $95 billion. The final version of this foreign aid supplemental will pass in the Senate. Chuck Schumer has guaranteed that. It would also pass in the House of Representatives, but Mike Johnson will not bring it to a vote. Again, do the math. Republicans have a 2-vote majority, which means all it takes is 3 Republicans to vote for the supplemental, the foreign aid supplemental, and it passes because every Democrat is going to vote for it. And there's no question there are enough votes in the House for the foreign aid supplemental to pass, but Mike Johnson will not release it. Last week, I told you about something called a discharge petition, a parliamentary procedure where a majority of House members can circumvent the will of our Speaker by signing a petition to release the bill from the Speaker's office, from his Rules Committee, and bring the bill to the floor for a thumbs up, thumbs down vote. It's called a discharge petition. If a majority of House members sign a discharge petition, then Johnson has no choice but to bring the $99 billion foreign aid supplemental to the floor for a vote where it would pass. Right now, Punchbowl reports that Massachusetts Democrat Jim McGovern is preparing a discharge petition, as is House Republican Brian Fitzpatrick from Pennsylvania. The will is there, especially in the Republican Party. As Joe Biden pointed out, the money that goes to Ukraine, $40 billion of that is a jobs bill for places like House Republican Brian Fitzpatrick's Pennsylvania. They have an arms industry there. So I'm being told it's a matter of timing. The feeling is Congress is close to getting the 2024 budget signed. It's been 5 months. It looks like there's a possibility we may actually have a 2024 budget. And the feeling is a discharge petition right now addressing the foreign aid supplemental would upset too many fragile alliances. However, if we see a 2024 budget passed within the next week or two, which as of this morning is conceivable, there's always the possibility that the wild card, Donald Trump, will order Mike Johnson kill the budget. I want a shutdown. And then Mike Johnson will obey. But if we get a 2024 budget passed within the next 2 weeks, we will either see a discharge petition forcing the vote on aid to Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and Gaza, or Mike Johnson will just put on his big boy pants late in the month. We won't need a discharge petition, and he'll allow the House to vote on the $95 billion foreign aid supplemental. Money going to Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, and humanitarian aid to Gaza. Originally, there was going to be border security attached to it, which would have brought it up to, I think, $110 billion, but that was stripped out thanks to Donald Trump. So right now, we may, by the end of the month, get $95 billion in military aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, along with humanitarian aid to Gaza. Vice President Harris on Sunday called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. This is big. This is big. She called the situation in Gaza a humanitarian catastrophe, where she said Palestinians are now eating animal feed to stay alive. The vice president said babies are born malnourished in Gaza while children die there from malnutrition and dehydration. The vice president said fighting must stop for at least 6 weeks. She then added Israel must be safe from future attacks from Hamas. President Biden is pushing for a ceasefire that would commence sometime before March 10th, when Ramadan begins. The vice president's full-throated call for a ceasefire came less than 5 days after 14% of Democrats voted uncommitted instead of for Joe Biden in the Michigan primary. They did this to protest Biden's seemingly unwavering support for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's war on Gaza. Polls don't mean anything, but they influence policy. And so do primary results, like last week's Michigan primary results. Joe Biden lost about 14% of the vote to uncommitted because of his support for Benjamin Netanyahu. He cannot afford to lose Arab American Democrats in Michigan come November. He needs Michigan, and the uncommitted movement is spreading to Minnesota today for Super Tuesday, and it picks up next week in the Washington state primary. So, like I said, everything is politics, and I wouldn't want it any other way. The situation in Gaza is politics. That doesn't mean I'm cheapening the catastrophe, but the only solution is a political one. Hamas has to become a legitimate political party that's recognized by Fatah and the rest of the world. Everything is politics. And behind the scenes, there has been tension between Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu for months. Biden, through our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, has been signaling displeasure for months over how Netanyahu has executed Israel's response to the attacks of October 7th. President Biden, in the past couple of weeks, has called for a two-state solution, a full-throated call for a two-state solution, while Benjamin Netanyahu responded with a full-throated guarantee that as long as he's the prime minister of Israel, there will never be a sovereign nation for the Palestinians. He said, as long as this is something that he said, Netanyahu always said this privately, but when Joe Biden said, when Gaza is over, when this war is over, there must be a two-state solution. And Benjamin Netanyahu responded, there will be no two states as long as I'm in charge. There is tension. There has been tension between Biden and Netanyahu. Netanyahu's cabinet is planning to expand settlements in the West Bank in violation of international law and America's foreign policy. The Biden administration 2 months ago issued travel bans against Jewish right-wing settlers, forbidding them from coming to America. At the same time, the Biden administration has sent 2 aircraft carriers to the region, putting Iranian-backed militia in Lebanon and Syria on notice not to mess with Israel. So Biden is upset with Netanyahu, but he still has his back, which is why 14% of Democrats in Michigan withheld their vote last Tuesday. The UN's Special Envoy on Sexual Violence in Conflict, Pramila Patten, issued a report on Monday confirming that Hamas engaged in gang rapes and sexual assault when it attacked Israel on October 7th. Patten said there is, quote, clear and convincing evidence that the female hostages, as well as the child hostages being held by Hamas right now, have also been subject to sexual assault. A blizzard in California's Sierra Nevada dropped 100 inches of snow over a 4-day period. This is climate catastrophe. Soda Springs, California, in 4 days, reported 116 inches. Record gusts of wind came in at nearly 200 miles per hour. However, this could be good news for California. Could be good news for California, which up until about last year had its worst drought in history. Here's how it works. The question is how quickly the snowpack melts come spring. Last year, a climate catastrophe-related early spring resulted in too much water too soon, resulting in severe flooding. We had an early warm spring, the snowpack melted too quickly, and there was massive flooding in California because of that. So a lot of snow is good, not good if it melts all at once. And this is the problem with climate catastrophe, the extremes. You get the extreme of 110 inches of snow, and you think, okay, that might be good, but in a month or two, we're going to get the extreme heat that melts that snow, and the soil and the Army Corps of Engineers can't build aqueducts and man-made rivers fast enough to channel all that melted snow. So keep your fingers crossed, because if this snowpack melts slowly, California will, I think, officially finally no longer be in a drought. And it was, just terrible. Meanwhile, the largest wildfire in Texas history is reportedly 15% contained. The Smokehouse Creek fire began on February 26, and it's so far burnt more than 1 million acres, spreading throughout northeastern Texas into western Oklahoma. So far, I believe 2 people are reported dead from this fire. What is amazing is while this fire was burning and you could taste the smoke throughout Texas, Donald Trump visited Texas during these fires with the sole mission of looking the other way. The fires were to the north, and he came to Texas to look the other way, to look south. and focus on the migrants. While Texas is burning because of our addiction to fossil fuels, Donald Trump did what he and the Republicans are paid to do: turn our attention away from the real crisis, climate catastrophe, deflect, divert, and focus on an imaginary migrant crisis. Don't look over there to the north, where Exxon, headquartered in Houston, is setting fire to the planet. Look down to the south. Let's look at the migrants. This is what Republicans do: distract and deflect in the service of billionaires. This is the mop-up for March 5th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed, and leave a comment. I'm fascinated by what you have to say. We have strict community guidelines. If you're going to talk about climate change as not being real, you'll be deleted. If you're going to defend Donald Trump, you'll be deleted. Not interested in what MAGA morons have to say. You're not welcome in the comments section, and your comments will be deleted. This is a safe space for sentient human beings, not Republicans. Not interested in anything you have to offer. It's not subject to debate. Donald Trump is a rapist, and it's not subject to debate. I don't want to hear, well, they only found him guilty of sexual assault. You're not welcome. Don't watch this show, and your comments will be deleted. Hi, it's Super Tuesday. Donald Trump and Nikki Haley are vying for 874 delegates representing 15 states and one territory, with the question not if Trump wins tonight, but by how much. Voters today, right now, in California, Texas, North Carolina, Massachusetts, Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Colorado, Maine, Minnesota, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, as well as American Samoa, they will all be voting today. Super Tuesday, however, is not just presidential politics. We know Joe Biden is going to win big today, and we know Donald Trump is going to win big today. What will be interesting to see is how well Nikki Haley does and how well Uncommitted does, challenging Joe Biden's unwavering support of Benjamin Netanyahu. It's also primary day for state and local office. And there are a couple of important races we'll be paying attention to today. The big race we'll be watching today is California's race for the Senate seat held by Democrat Dianne Feinstein, who passed away last year. So this is a jungle primary in California. Let me just try to explain what a jungle primary is. It's kind of important. They've had jungle primaries, I think, since 2011 in California. Jungle primary only applies to candidates for state and local office, or senators, not presidents. A jungle primary puts all the candidates on the same ballot with no regard to party affiliation. Presidential candidates are different, but in the race for the Senate in California, it's a jungle. You have Democrats and Republicans all on the same ballot. And from the list of candidates, only two will make it to the ballot in November. You got to remember, California is deep blue. A Democrat is going to end up as the senator. And Adam Schiff is polling ahead. Congressman Adam Schiff is polling ahead of two other Democratic members of Congress, Katie Porter and Barbara Lee. And I've gone over all this before. The Republicans are offering up Steve Garvey. he's a baseball player. That's all you need to know. He's a Republican and a baseball player. And because this is a jungle primary, Adam Schiff is pouring at least $11 million into advertising for the Republican Steve Garvey. Adam Schiff is spending more on Steve Garvey than Steve Garvey is spending on Steve Garvey. Why? Well, Adam Schiff, in a jungle primary, wants a Republican to come in second. He does not want to face either Katie Porter or Barbara Lee in November. He doesn't want the two Democrats, one of the two Democrats, to come in second. And it looks like Katie Porter has a chance of a second place finish. So Adam Schiff is pumping money into Steve Garvey's campaign. Porter versus Schiff would result in a November face-off between two strong and well-respected Democratic members of Congress. It could be trouble. So just so we're clear, Adam Schiff is the front-runner, Democrat. He does not want Katie Porter, Democrat, to come in second, because then it would be two Democrats running against each other in November. So he is pumping about $11 million into Republican Steve Garvey's campaign, because Schiff knows that he can beat Garvey because California is never going to elect a Republican. I think Schiff has about $50 million. I think he spent $50 million so far, anywhere between $40 million and $50 million. And 11 of that went for Steve Garvey. Unbelievable. So that will be a race we're following. This is also a very important race to keep an eye on. We're looking at Texas's 23rd congressional district, where Republican Tony Gonzalez faces a primary challenge from MAGA Republicans to punish Gonzalez for his vote in favor of establishing a January 6th commission to investigate the role Donald Trump and his White House played in the insurrection. So this primary challenge is part of Donald Trump's effort to purge the entire party of non-loyalists. How many of the Congress, the members of Congress who voted to impeach him are still in office? How many Republicans who voted to impeach him are still in office? How many Republican members of Congress who voted to certify the election in favor of Joe Biden are still in office? Ken Buck is leaving. Chip Roy is still around. Now, Gonzalez was censured by the Texas Republican Party. He's a Republican, and he was censured by the Texas Republican Party 2 years ago after he turned out to be the only Texas Republican to vote in favor of Joe Biden's bipartisan gun bill that got passed after the Uvalde shooting. By the way, I have a correction. The judge in Illinois who stripped Donald Trump's name from the ballot temporarily was a she, not a they. So my apologies. Nikki Haley won the Washington, D.C. primary on Sunday, scooping up all 19 delegates with 62% of the vote. Donald Trump refused to campaign in this heavily black city, which he referred to as a swamp. He said, I'm not going to waste my time campaigning in that swamp. Only 2,000 Republicans voted on Sunday in Washington, D.C., which has close to 700,000 residents, 23,000 of whom are registered Republicans. So think about that. You have 23,000 registered Republicans, and only 2,000 showed up. What does that tell you? Feels like Iowa. What was it, 7% of registered Republicans? I think it's 7% of registered Republicans showed up for the Iowa caucus. Doesn't bode well for November for Donald Trump. Meanwhile, the Republican National Committee meets in Houston later this week, where Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, that would be Eric Trump's idiot wife, Eric Trump, the idiot son of Donald Trump, Lara Trump is expected to get elected as the National Party chairwoman of the RNC. Nikki Haley said the only reason Trump is pushing for his daughter-in-law to become party chairman is so she will funnel donations to pay his mounting legal bills. Trump denies that, and we should take him at his word. On Monday, North Dakota held its Republican caucuses. Trump got 1,632 votes. Nikki Haley got 273, which I believe is more than the number of people who live in North Dakota. They get 2 senators in North Dakota. Washington, D.C. gets none. Donald Trump got 1,632 votes. And this shit stain of dirt called North Dakota, if it really exists, gets 2 senators, and Washington, D.C. doesn't get any? Unbelievable. But let's all worship our founding fathers and the Constitution and talk about how great the system is. Where was George McGovern from? Was it South Dakota? He's my hero. He was either from South Dakota or North Dakota, one of the Dakotas. One of the greatest senators ever. The populist movement came out of Iowa, the Plain States, the Badlands. But I'll talk about that some other time, how the Democratic Party under Clinton alienated white working class in the Midwest and in the Plain States. MAGA didn't emerge in a vacuum. The Clintons created MAGA because they neglected the working class. That's a fact. And not only that, Hillary urged Donald Trump to run for president in 2016 because she and Bill thought, wouldn't it be great if we just had to run against Donald Trump? Be a landslide. For another show. Donald Trump hit the campaign trail over the weekend with a barrage of lies about migrants. He then told Newsmax on Monday that if elected, he's going to lean heavily on local police officers to round up undocumented Americans while granting those police officers immunity from prosecution to do whatever they want to the migrants. I don't think that's legal. I think the Supreme Court is hearing a challenge to Governor Greg Abbott deputizing his state police to do the work of the federal government in rounding up migrants. I don't think you're allowed to use local police or state police to deal with immigrants and migrants. Trump is now promising that upon returning to the White House, he will initiate the largest deportation of immigrants in American history. It's really, if you watch his speech, it's blood and soil Nazi stuff. And he's slurring his speech. And there were some moments where he Mitch McConnelled and froze for a second. During rallies in North Carolina and Virginia over the weekend, Trump lied when he said that Joe Biden was attempting, quote, to overthrow the government of the United States by allowing an invasion of migrants. Donald Trump is all in on the great replacement theory. He's perpetuating this racist trope. adding that Biden intends to flood America with a, quote, foreign army of millions of immigrants. Why, says Trump? So they can vote for Democrats. This is that he's been claiming since 2016. He said the only reason he lost the popular vote to Hillary in 2016 is because the Democrats sent an army of migrants over the border to vote. Lies. Trump said he returned from last week's visit to the border, convinced that these are not migrants, but warriors. He claimed foreign Central American leaders were releasing the migrants from prisons and mental institutions in order to wage war against America. Now remember, this isn't just a candidate for office. This isn't the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party. This is a former president talking this way. Nikki Haley, to her credit, is amping up her criticism of Donald Trump. She's been hitting him really hard in the lead up to today, Super Tuesday. Some are suggesting that she might be thinking of launching a third-party bid. During a campaign stop in Texas over the weekend, Haley called Trump unhinged and said there was a perfectly good bipartisan border bill ready to be signed earlier this year, but Donald Trump ordered Mike Johnson to kill it so Trump would have something to run on. Now, this is huge. This is huge for Nikki Haley to say out loud that there was a perfectly good bipartisan border bill, but Donald Trump ordered it killed because he needs the migrants to run on. It's huge. It's one thing for Joe Biden and the New York Times to say this, but when Nikki Haley, a Republican, says it, Republicans are going to believe it. For Nikki Haley to speak truth to Republican voters about the migrant issue, very brave and unheard of. Haley then accused Trump of being soft on immigration, reminding the crowd that he had 4 years to address his signature issue, which was what? Immigration, and failed to do anything about it. Well, polls are important. They may not be accurate, but they're important. And right now, it's disheartening. It doesn't look good for Joe Biden. But again, I don't put any stock in these polls. It's important to remember that in all the contests so far this year, these same polls keep getting Donald Trump's margin of victory wrong. Donald Trump is underperforming what pollsters predicted in every contest, from Iowa to South Carolina. And it's important to remember anywhere between 20 to 40% of Republicans who turn out have not voted for him. Yes, a new CBS poll shows 90% of Republicans nationwide, they say they will vote for Trump. But national polls mean nothing. It's Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. If Biden loses one of those, he's got to swap out either Georgia or Arizona. If he doesn't win Wisconsin, then he's got to win Georgia or Arizona again, and then he's got 270. So all that matters are the Republicans in those three states. That's all that matters. All that matters. For some reason, the polls, if we're to believe them, they seem to show that Americans are saying the economy was better under Donald Trump. It clearly was not. So how do you explain this other than nostalgia? It's nostalgia. Nostalgia is never rooted in truth. Make America great again. America was either never great are always great, depending on what yardsticks you're using. Americans are nostalgic, which is cloudy thinking. Why? Well, when Trump was president, what was that, 7 years ago? I was 7 years younger, and my mom was still alive. Yeah, I'm nostalgic. But that doesn't mean things were better. We were just younger, but it wasn't better. It is believed that a week from tonight, Donald Trump will have sealed the Republican nomination just in time for his first criminal trial, which starts in Manhattan on the 25th of March. He's going to make history. He is going to be, on March 25th, he becomes the first president in American history to step foot in a criminal courtroom facing charges. Unlike Donald Trump's civil trials last year, Trump is required to attend the Manhattan criminal trial. Of the 4 criminal trials that Trump faces this year, this one that starts on March 25th is considered the runt of the litter. But Trump is still expected to lose. The evidence is overwhelming. And even worse, he's going before a jury of New Yorkers. We're not idiots from Alabama or North Dakota. We know who Donald Trump is. He only got 12% of the vote in 2020. This isn't shit-stain Alabama. In Manhattan, we know exactly who Donald Trump is. Nobody here likes him. It is unlikely that a conviction in this trial will result in a prison sentence. But, as I pointed out last week, the Manhattan District Attorney coordinates everything with New York State Attorney General Letitia James, so who knows what happens. For example, will Donald Trump insist on taking the stand? And when he takes the stand, he won't be able to help himself. He will commit perjury. There are reports that Donald Trump is controlling his legal team in this one. He's cleaned house, and that's not a good idea for him. For his own well-being, it is imperative that Donald Trump never, ever, ever take the stand. He will perjure himself. But word is he's calling the shots because he is the expert. He something like 4,000 lawsuits. I read somewhere that he's had more trial experience than a veteran criminal attorney. This is his first. No, it's not his first criminal trial. Is it his first criminal trial? I think there was something when he was a citizen. I think there were some criminal investigations, but he knows the legal. He thinks he knows the legal system. Alan Weisselberg, the Trump Organization's chief financial officer for decades, Alan Weisselberg goes all the way back to Donald's father. Was hired by Donald's racist KKK member father. Alan Weisselberg, the Trump Organization's chief financial officer for decades, pleaded guilty to perjury on Monday. Weisselberg now admits he lied during his testimony in the New York City civil fraud trial when he claimed he played no role in misleading lenders when Trump filled out financials claiming Trump's penthouse and Trump Tower was 3 times its actual size. To borrow against his penthouse, Trump tripled the size of it. And Weisselberg swore under oath he had nothing to do with that. And then they found some emails to Forbes magazine that Weisselberg had written, so he came in on Monday and pleaded guilty. Now, Weisselberg already served 3 months on Rikers Island after pleading guilty to tax fraud during a trial where the Trump Organization was found guilty of cheating the government out of a couple of $1 million. The Trump Organization, not Trump himself, and Weisselberg were convicted back in 2022. Weisselberg was sentenced to 5 months on Rikers Island. He served 3, and he also had to pay a $1 million fine. These new perjury charges that he confessed to on Monday, significant, because right before going to jail back in 2022, Alan Weisselberg was chief financial officer of the Trump Organization. He signed all the checks for decades, and the Trump legal team was hoping to have Alan Weisselberg testify on behalf of Trump in this month's criminal trial here in Manhattan, where the district attorney has indicted Trump on charges of falsifying records and violating campaign finance laws when Trump tried to hide hush money payments to Stormy Daniels in the weeks leading up to the 2016 presidential election. This is why you don't see Melania on the campaign trail. She's already devising her exit strategy. There's going to be nothing left when she files for divorce. I'm sure Trump is going to think, I showed her, huh? She thought she was going to get some money. I showed her. Weisselberg is now 76. He returns to court for his sentencing in April. He is expected to be sent back to Rikers unless he cooperates with the Manhattan District Attorney. Rikers is one of the roughest jails in America. Alan Weisselberg does not want to go back there. So he's not cooperating with the Manhattan District Attorney. He might now. Weisselberg retired from the Trump Organization right before leaving for jail. He was given a $2 million severance package that, according to the New York Times, was contingent. They put this in writing. It was contingent. The Trump Organization put this severance package in writing. You get $2 million as long as you never cooperate with prosecutors unless you're legally obligated. This prompted Judge Arthur Engoron. He was the presiding judge in the civil fraud trial. He said Weisselberg's severance package proves he's not a trusted witness. Judge Engoron added the Trump family is keeping him on, quote, a very short leash, unquote. So, as I said, the Manhattan criminal trial starts March 25th. A lot of people are not expecting anything huge, but you've got Alan Weisselberg, who has never cooperated with the Manhattan DA. He hasn't cooperated with New York State Attorney General Letitia James. Comes in yesterday, pleads guilty to perjury. He's going back to Rikers at the age of 76. Something tells me he's going to cooperate. And we're going to find out a lot of stuff we already know about the Trump Organization. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Do me a favor, if you enjoyed this, share the episode. Copy and paste the link to this episode and put it in an email, text message, or on social media. Thank you to Bob in the chat room who keeps the conversation civil. I will see everybody probably Thursday night Thursday morning. Thank you.